The House will come to order. Motions and resolutions.
Pursuant to Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, Igo and Johnson P. move that the rule therein be suspended and an urgency be declared, and that the rules of the House be so far suspended so that House File Number 3023 be given its third reading and placed upon its final passage.
I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That is my motion. We are going to be making sure to get this bill brought to the House floor today and passed before we have to adjourn here at midnight. And I believe the other co-sponsor of this motion will be speaking this as well before we pick it up.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Johnson P.
Thank you, Speaker. I do concur with this motion. Kind of like we discussed the other night as well, the clearest and best path for these benefits and this to get done is making sure that it ends up in that conference report that comes back when we pass that final jobs bill. I understand and respect the desire to send the message that this body, we support this group of workers. I'm excited to have this conversation. Thank you, Speaker.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll.
No.
Oh. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 3023, an act relating to unemployment insurance, adopting additional benefits for certain iron ore mining companies.
There are no amendments at the desk. The chief clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 3023.
Third reading. Discussion. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Godfrey.
Point of order. Do you want me to introduce the bill since it is my bill, Speaker?
As long as he'll, perfect. I recognize a member from St. Louis, Representative Johnson P.
Thank you, Speaker. House File 3023 extends unemployment benefits an additional 26 weeks for approximately 630 workers that are impacted by two mines closing on the Iron Range, Hibtac and Hibbing, and Minorca in Virginia. I just want to briefly touch on the unique path that this bill has taken to get before us here tonight. Initially, this bill back, I believe it was probably in April, was introduced by Representative Igo, and it had this provision to extend these benefits for these miners, as well as some environmental provisions. And there was a lot of concern about that from folks from a lot of different areas, including my side of the aisle. And with some discussion with our team on the DFL labor side of things, we decided to offer an amendment that would just extend the benefits and would remove those environmental rollbacks and changes. Ultimately, that amendment failed. That is why we decided as a team to introduce a standalone bill to extend these benefits, and that is why it has my name on it right now. The process of how we do these things is important, and I'm learning more and more about that process, especially in the final hours of this session as we go forward. That bill was discussed in Jobs. It was passed unanimously out of our committee after some good discussion. It then went to Ways, where it was passed again unanimously, and a lot of the discussion wasn't necessarily around the bill, but some very good advice, I would say, from more senior legislators, talking about the importance of these conversations that we have back and forth to each other on bills like this that are important, that make a difference for people, that we should be able to find and build that bipartisan support off of. And in a tied House, there was no conversation before that initial bill got brought to our Labor Committee. It seems like there should have been some conversations. Last week, when there was an attempt to declare an urgency and bring this bill before us, I found out about 2 minutes before I stepped on this House floor. If it is my bill, and based on the advice that I was receiving, there should have been maybe some conversations if we were serious about getting this passed. Yesterday, same story, different day. Right about to walk on the floor, somebody brings it to my attention that they're going to bring this bill up again. No discussion on what it means or how we actually get it done. So it appears that maybe I'm not the only one who should heed some of that advice of engaging in communication prior to actions like this if we want to do meaningful things and actually pass some of these bills. But that leads us to this moment. a moment where we can take a vote to offer some breathing room, some certainty, and a path forward for 630 workers on the Iron Range. That is my bill. Thank you, Speaker.
I now recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Gottfried.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say that I am rising in support of this bill. This is an act of solidarity. Solidarity in the labor movement is the act of standing together. Whether you are a steel worker, whether you are a nurse, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a state employee, or whether you are an education support professional. And I want to say something about solidarity here today as we pass this bill off the floor, because it will pass. An attack on one is an attack on all, which is why I voted against the K-12 bill when we passed it off the floor, because it was against my deeply held beliefs that we need to stand for all workers. And so I am proud here today to stand with our iron workers in the Northern Range. Now that is, in the Iron Range, I should say. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen here today. And some of that is called boss behavior. Now those of us in the labor movement know that boss behavior is the opposite of solidarity. Boss behavior is leveraging workers for other gains. And I would like to point out the start of this bill in that it leveraged political gains from my colleagues across the aisle, trying to utilize our shared belief that we must support our workers in the Iron Range. And most recently, this is the way I see it, I have seen this bill used as a stalling tactic to aid my colleagues in their negotiations to strip workers in other areas of our state of their protections and of their benefits that they fought hard for. This is boss behavior. This is not solidarity. Boss behavior is pitting workers against other communities, which we have seen used in rhetoric around undocumented insurance for undocumented folks. We have seen it used in the discussions surrounding the school meals that we provide for our children. We have seen this behavior when we're extolling care for workers while some members of this body seek to roll back worker protections and other benefits like paid family medical leave, earned sick and save time, and unemployment insurance for hourly workers in schools. This is not solidarity. And I want to say that I stand with all workers in this state in solidarity, which is why I rise in support of this bill. I know that the vast majority of people on my side of the aisle here do too. I sincerely question, based off of some of this boss behavior that I have seen on the other side of the aisle, if that is true. So I ask, please support this bill. Stand up for our iron workers. But if you really believe in supporting our workers and standing in solidarity with them, do so. All workers, not just those in your district. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote green.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise in favor of the motion. I think the taconite mines that operate in northern Minnesota have a special worker that lives there, and the work is, it's hard, dirty work, but the people that work there are proud of what they produce. We'll see some union members coming through every now and then, and just to see them and talk to them, they're so proud of what they do and how they do it. What we're asking for is just an extension of unemployment insurance. Last time we did this was the first time I was elected, the first month, and when we were here talking about it, we extended it. It never got used because the mine fired up before the extension. So this is an insurance policy. This is to make sure. We know pretty sure that one of the mines is not going to open. And if it does open, it won't open till after the December deadline. And one of the other things, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but every one of us represents a school district. And every school district in Minnesota receives monies from the taconite mines. So it's important that we keep those mines going. Everyone benefits from it, not just, the range. We all benefit from these mines and these workers. So I think we owe it to our people up north that do this to extend this benefit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please vote green.
I recognize a member from Dakota, Representative Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm a former steelworker. I know it sounds strange, but my airline, which is regional jet service for Delta, was so small in the beginning that no other union would take us. And so for like 5 minutes, we were paper and allied chemical workers, but they merged with the steelworkers, and we all became steelworkers. And everything that I know about the labor movement, I learned from the steelworkers. They are some of my loveliest and most beautiful relationships, whether they're workers in the rubber plants in Alabama, who, by the way, because our wages were so low at the airline, they supplemented our dues. So those steelworkers paid larger dues to supplement what we couldn't afford to pay. And that brings me to the fundamental tenet of labor, and that is solidarity, as my brother, Representative Godfrey, talked about. And I've heard colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk this year about how they're the party of working people, those who shower before work and after work. It's not true, because if you are, you would know that the foundation of the labor movement is solidarity. That means what is good for one of us is good for all of us. We do not leave people behind. We do not pit workers against each other. That is not what we do in the labor movement. And that's not what we're going to do with this vote. Of course we want to extend unemployment insurance for our miners, our steel workers up on the range. Of course we do. Of course we want them to be able to take care of their families, and we hope that they get to go back to work. But we also value our hourly school workers. They are not seasonal. They are not part-time. They are not taking a summer vacation. They are people that matter to our students, to our teachers, to our staff, to the parents, to our communities. Are they less deserving of economic security when they're worried about paying their bills? I hope that the answer for every one of us is no. It is not our job to come here and take things away from people. We heard workers tell us for decades they need paid family medical leave, earned sick and safe time. I have people email me stories about how earned sick and safe time has saved them, saved their jobs, saved their family. It is not our job to take things away from the people of Minnesota. It is our job here, when we earned our election certificates, to make sure Minnesotans' lives are more affordable and more secure. It is absolutely out of line to propose to take things away, and it is out of line to pit one group of workers against another. I heard Representative Scraba say, when union members come through here, they are proud of what they do. Absolutely. No truer words have been spoken in this chamber that workers are proud of what they do. And our paras and our bus drivers and our hourly school workers are just as proud as our steel workers are of what they do. And they are just as deserving. And so I hope that when we push our buttons, we push them for all workers. Please vote green.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of this bill because I believe every worker deserves the security and the dignity of unemployment insurance when they get laid off. I'm actually really glad for having this conversation that we've been having around unemployment insurance because it's actually a really important program for both workers and their communities, and frankly, the whole economy. I came into the legislature at a time where we were talking a lot about unemployment insurance during the middle of the pandemic. It was at the center of a lot of conversations. How we were going to keep communities alive, how we were going to ensure that workers could pay their rents, how we were going to ensure that people could pay their mortgage and pay for groceries. We talked about it in the context of teenagers who were carved out and couldn't get unemployment insurance. And we, in a bipartisan way, passed a bill that said those teenagers who are making a living for their families could get unemployment insurance. We talked about it in terms of hourly school workers. We talked about it in terms of the UI Trust Fund. We had a lot of conversations about unemployment insurance. And although it's a program that has been around since the Great Depression, I think that we oftentimes operate, it's in the background, people are used to having access to it. Our economy has baked in the benefits of having that lifeline for families and local communities. But we should talk about how important it is. What we're talking about with unemployment insurance is that businesses make decisions that are out of the control and often at the expense of their workers. Whether they're national mining companies, whether they're local businesses, whether they're school districts, these are employers making business decisions that have huge impact on the lives of their workers. And unemployment insurance, as we heard yesterday, as we have heard in committee, is a lifeline to get people through these times. It's a partial wage replacement, half your wages up to 6 months when you're looking for other work. Being able to pay your rent, your bills, and put food on the table is incredibly important for families. That is the situation that our brothers and sisters up in Hibbing and Virginia have been put in. And these are jobs that the entire economy relies on up there to fuel the local businesses, to ensure that families and kids are taken care of. Unemployment insurance provides economic security at a times where workers' lives can feel powerless and out of control. That's what this program does. It provides some power and some control, a little security, and a lifeline. And it's really unfortunate that so much of this conversation this year has been around how we're taking it away from people. Rather than leaving people out or carving them up, we should all be focused on an economy that ensures that people have economic security, that communities have the support that they need to weather the storm of economic downturns. If there's one thing we have heard and can take away, if you've been at any hearings, if you've heard the stories on the floor, if you've just been listening to people in your community, whether it's steelworkers, whether it's bus drivers, whether it's nurses, anybody who has access to unemployment insurance, it's that this is life-saving and having access is life-changing. So whether it is the miner on the range or a lunch lady in Rochester, a laborer from Richfield, every Minnesota worker and every Minnesota community deserves this peace of mind. It's critical for workers and their families and also for our communities. That is why I fight so passionately to ensure that all workers in Minnesota have access to this. So consider this my love letter to Minnesota's unemployment insurance program and the lifeline that it provides. This is important for these workers, just like it's important for so many others. Members, please vote yes.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Warwas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. As you'll hear time and again over these years that we're together, I am a steel worker, and so I just want to tell you how much I appreciate the talk about solidarity tonight. There's folks watching back home right now, and they're going to know that in this moment, coming right up here, that this body is going to support unemployment insurance for steel workers. We have a very unique economy on the Iron Range, and you know, we talk about that over and over. a 140-year history approximately of providing iron for the steel-making process that has carried this country through so very much. And keeping our workers in the district who will be waiting to see if they have a job when all this is over is so important. As we've said before, they have a very unique skill set. Many of them are generational miners like myself. I'm a third-generation miner. There's some fourth-generation guys out there. I'm not going to say a lot, but I want to thank members like David Gottfried, Representative Gottfried for the solidarity, and Kayla, Representative Berg, I thank you for that. And but we have one main economy on the range, and that's mining. And these 640 workers have very few options. There is not 640 other jobs for them to go to. And so I won't belabor the point. I came here to work in a bipartisan way, and we're doing that tonight. I thank Representative Pete Johnson for bringing this bill, as I did the last time I spoke on this issue. I appreciate the fact that we're getting this done, and this issue will not become a larger political football as we enter into the next stage of the legislative session and post-session. So thank you for that.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Zalesnikar.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, this bill for mining supports an entire region. And not only the region, but as I said before, it supports the entire state. The school permanent fund comes from mining. And there's millions of dollars that are supporting our schools through mining. And that can continue to bring continued stability to our schools across the state of Minnesota. Mining is also critical for our energy portfolio in this state. You probably heard that we've got the resources in our backyard in Minnesota. And if you follow the MISO grid, it says we should expect blackouts by this summer. And we need to have a plan to have the independence for our state and for our country to make sure that that's not the world we're living in, and that's not the state we're living in, whether it's hot outside or it's cold outside. And we have the resources in our backyard to do everything we need to do for batteries and for our entire energy portfolio. We also have used mining for our national security. It also provides the entire platform for construction in mining. So when you vote green today, know that you're supporting the schools in the state of Minnesota, you're supporting a region, and when we lose the miners because there's not stability for a job to go back to, our hospitals, we just built we have two huge hospitals in Duluth with spouses that live all over the region. And when they leave for mining, so does the spouse that works at the hospital. So does the spouse that works at the police department, or works at the school, or works for the fire department. That's how it works when you lose a region of jobs. We had that happen in the 80s in northern Minnesota, and we can't have that happen again. So members, vote green for northern Minnesota and the state of Minnesota.
I recognize the member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. You know, so March 20th of this year at 10 a.m., I don't think I'll forget that moment. And I think I speak for every single man and woman on the range when we remember that, because there's something about when you find out about a layoff like this that I don't know how to explain the feelings that you get when that happens. It's like there's a piece inside of you that just goes missing. You feel empty. You feel hollow. And talking about it right now, it brings back everything that not just I felt, other members of the range delegation in this room felt in that moment, but what our communities felt in that moment. And I think that's one of the things that makes the Iron Range so unique and why I'm so proud to be from there and represent there. Because collectively, we all felt that in that moment, right? It was hard. Over 600 jobs in communities that are incredibly closely knit and tight. We all know everyone, and everyone knows everyone else. right? It's the Iron Range telephone game. You can't do anything on a Friday night without everyone knowing by Saturday morning, because we all take care of each other and look after everybody. And I want to give credit too. When that happened, I want to say thanks to a lot of my friends on the other side of the aisle. I had quite a few of you make sure to stop me in the hall or come by my office and ask how I was doing and how our region was doing. It really means a lot. So thank you. But after that moment, you have a minute where you grieve. Okay, what's the next step here? What do we have to do? How can we make this better? So within a week later, I had both of the union presidents of the affected mines in my office, and we were talking about what are we going to do. And that's where we drafted the first rendition of this extended unemployment. And it was mentioned on the House floor here tonight that there were some other things attached to that bill, right? Some work to do on some of our environmental permitting and regulations. And not rollbacks, just some clarifications to try and give that promise of a future. And we came together with the steelworkers. I went back in district and met with them. I've been on the phone on and off with them for the last 2 months. And we came up with this plan that it's time to start advocating for the larger picture. And I think that conversation's been going really well. Now, do I wish that we were on the floor today talking about House File 3030? Of course. I think that's what the whole part of northern Minnesota with the Iron Range wants right now. But we came to this point where we're going to stand together as a body and make sure to get an unemployment extension done for these men and women. And that's a great thing. And that's okay. And in that time, we've had a lot of great conversations about those other things in House File 3030 that I think we're going to continue to have conversations on. So today, I'm glad we could make this motion to get this bill done. Because my friend and seatmate, Representative Warwas, said it best, that there is people watching back home. And him and I, along with Representative Skraba, Representative Lesnikar, Representative Davis, we've been hearing about this constantly. And it's not so much about making sure we get the UI extension. No, the story's changed a little bit now. It's about what does the next generation look like on the Iron Range? And how can we make sure to keep supporting that? And that's what this chamber is going to do today. So thank you to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for those comments. Thank you to my colleagues on this side of the aisle. Like I said on Wednesday when we brought this forward as an urgency, this was and never was meant to be political. This is about what's doing what is right, taking care of our fellow Minnesotans. And I hope that with this vote tonight, we can take that step in the right direction to give those men and women peace of mind. But not just the workers themselves, but the communities that they're from. And I've said it before, and I think the Rangers before me probably said it too. I encourage anybody in this body to come spend a day with any member of the Range delegation in our communities. See what's so special about where we are. Learn about how close our communities are. See why we're so passionate about this issue. Because it's a long, long tradition of being very, very proud of what we do. And that's why it's even hard sometimes to stand up on the House floor and ask for help like this. Because if you ask these men and women that I've sat in rooms with, they say, well, of course, unemployment extension would be great, but we want a job more than anything. They want a livelihood for their families. They want a livelihood for their future of their children on the Iron Range because they love where they live and they love what they do. And that's the larger conversation of this. And I try to have this objective, positive outlook on life that, everything seems to happen in this world for some reason, whether or not it's X, Y, or Z. But maybe we are in this moment now as a legislature, as a state, because this is when we start to realize just how big some of these things are. And we can start taking steps in the right direction to not just protect the future of the Iron Range, but protect the future of every single man and woman across this state, providing great opportunities, great places to raise a family. And we already know that Minnesota is the best place to live. So again, members, thank you for taking the time tonight to declare this urgency. Thank you, Representative Johnson, for this bill. Thank you for helping to dual track it. Things move fast and can be crazy around here. But what matters most right now to the people back home is that this bill is on the House floor in front of us today, and we're going to pass it. And we're going to show support for not only just the mining industry, not only just the men and women of labor up there, but for every single community on Minnesota's Iron Range. And that, members, is worth its weight in gold. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion? I recognize the author of the bill, the member from St. Louis, Representative Johnson P.
Thank you, Speaker. I do appreciate the urgency to send this message that we, as a body, value the critical lifeline that unemployment insurance is. And that the difference that it makes, not just for those workers, not just for their families, not just for their communities, but for the entire state. Because I've been in those communities on the range. I grew up range adjacent, if you will, in Two Harbors. There are plenty of close-knit communities that are held together by things like our hourly school workers, by our state and federal workers that have also lost their jobs. So there are special places in all corners of this state. I think you maybe sense some of the frustration from this side of the aisle that we're willing to send this message to one group, but not every other Minnesota, that the work that they do is valued, that they, as human beings, are valued. They're not disposable or less worthy than any other worker. Well, in committee, we regularly heard how when workers need something, whether that be time to heal from an illness or an injury, care for a loved one, be with a newborn, or when they ask for more training or to be protected from things like wage theft or misclassification, or ask for safe staffing ratios, they are somehow a problem. And that is a problem, that they have those needs as workers, as human beings. And that we look at them more as just cogs in a machine, that their only value is when they're in that machine and they are turning the gears. And some of that frustration over this session is bringing up those federal workers and those state workers that are in the process or have lost their jobs. Those hourly school workers that we have talked a lot about on this floor. Or when we talk about allowing and protecting and making sure that when paid family leave goes into effect on January 1st, 2026, it is there for every single worker. And that the earned sick and safe time that workers are surviving off of right now remains. And that their uncertainty that those workers are facing, we hear about costs, we hear on how burdensome it is for employers, and those workers seem to get brushed aside. But somehow this group of workers has been able to capture the attention of all of us, because you see the difference that this makes in those communities, that when those workers are protected, when they feel safe, and what they can do. We are able to show them that support, that empathy, and that compassion. But somehow, when it comes to that bus driver that we trust our kids' lives with, to pick them up in the morning and to deliver them home at night, we don't. Or that lunch lady or that secretary that makes sure your kid is eating every day in the schools and getting everything that they need, we don't. Or that para that dedicates their days to supporting our teachers and the most vulnerable kids in our classrooms to make sure everybody has a chance to learn, we don't. So while this vote tonight is to support a specific group of workers, and it will feel good to do that because they need it, that certainty, all of the things that got mentioned, it is important. So I'm asking you, everybody in this room, who still has their bills out, are still working in conference, to use that same compassion and that same sense of urgency as we finalize the rest of these budgets, so that we can bring some of that relief and that compassion to workers all across our state. Vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The chief clerk will call the names of the member voting remotely.
Her.
Aye.
Her votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 132 yeas and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, are there any conference committee reports available at the desk?
Currently none at the desk.
Further point of parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that a signed spreadsheet agreement was reached last night on the higher education bill, and that all of the Democrats on the conference committee have signed the conference committee report. Are you aware whether the Republican conferees will sign the report so that we'll be able to take the bill up by midnight?
I am not aware of any of that information. Thank you for the question. Sorry I couldn't answer it in any way, shape, or form. I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move a recess to call the Speaker.
Representative Niska moves a recess to the call of the chair or the Speaker. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. No. The motion prevails. The House stands in recess.